Good morning. The gospel tells us that we should pray always. Persistence in the prayer of supplication of God is commanded by Jesus. So every day, except for Good Friday, the church offers the most greatest of prayers. How's that for good English? The most greatest. The church offers the most greatest of prayers, the holy sacrifice of the Mass. The Catechism calls the Eucharist the source and summit of the Christian faith. But what is the most common complaint for not coming to Mass, especially among young people? Mass is boring. Now, I'm not much of a sports fan, but there was a lot of excitement around here back in 2001. In January 2001, the Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl. Everybody was wearing purple, and people had flags on their cars, and people were ecstatic with celebration. But where was that same excitement when the Ravens won the Super Bowl in 2013? I didn't see that excitement. Where had all that excitement gone? If you want to get excited about something, get excited about something that will last. Every Sunday, every day of the year, with the exception of Good Friday, the church celebrates the holy sacrifice of the Mass. At every Mass, you and I, the rest of the Archdiocese of Baltimore, and the whole world, we all come together to remember the great victory of Jesus Christ over sin and death. Our watching of the Super Bowl on a DVD, or just remembering the Ravens' victory several years ago, does not make the Ravens the Super Bowl champions again, no matter how much we persist in prayer. But the same is not true for what happens at Mass. At Mass, we simply do not remember what Jesus did for us nearly 2,000 years ago, but we become present to that event in its reality and power. The Mass is not like a music CD or a DVD that we play over and over again. That may be persistent, but it's not real. However, because Jesus instituted the sacrament of holy orders, he passed on to his apostles the power to change bread and wine into his very body and blood, soul and divinity. We no longer have to be merely content with remembering Jesus' victory over sin and death. We are here at Calvary through the mystery of the sacraments of holy orders and the Holy Eucharist. Jesus' victory over sin and death does not have to be won over and over again every January, like the Super Bowl. Jesus died once for all, and he will never die again because the victory has been won. In celebrating the holy sacrifice of the Mass, the sacrifice of Calvary is mystically transported to us right here at this Mass. And we stand at the foot of the cross with Mary, our Blessed Mother, the Mother of the Eucharist, and with St. John. Saint Pope John Paul II wrote an encyclical called Ecclesia de Eucharistia, the Church of the Eucharist. I would recommend everyone read that. It's amazing, it's beautiful. You can find it on the Vatican website, the Church of the Eucharist. The Latin term is Ecclesia de Eucharistia. In that encyclical, St. Pope John Paul II wrote, "The Mass makes present the sacrifice of the cross. It does not add to that sacrifice, nor does it multiply it. It makes Christ's one definitive, redemptive sacrifice always present in time. The sacrificial nature of the Eucharistic mystery cannot be understood as something separate, independent of the cross, or only indirectly referring to the sacrifice of Calvary." End quote. And we, the Church, have been celebrating that victory and experiencing God's real presence with us since the founding of the Catholic Church by Jesus Christ nearly 2,000 years ago. Again, the Mass makes present the sacrifice of the cross. It doesn't represent, nor does it represent the sacrifice of Calvary. But as St. Pope John Paul II reminds us, the Mass makes present the one definitive, redemptive, unrepeatable sacrifice of Christ on the cross. If we have not grasped this essential point, then we are not Catholics, but Protestants. Protestants view their services as merely a proclamation of what Jesus has done for us. The Catholic Mass makes it present for us. If we fail to grasp the enormous magnitude of what we do here at this altar, then we have missed the love with which God has showered us. We do not just recall the sacrifice of Calvary, but we are actually present at it. You may think that these 3 steps are a stage, so to see the priest. But these 3 steps are there actually to remind the priest that he is ascending the mountain of Calvary as he celebrates the Mass. As I said, we do not just recall the sacrifice of Calvary, but we are actually present at it. This is what St. Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. He says, "For as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the death of the Lord until he comes. Therefore, whoever eats the bread and drinks the cup of the Lord unworthily will have to answer for the body and blood of the Lord." If people really knew what went on at Mass, you could never say that Mass is boring again. Not only are you present at the crucifixion and the resurrection when you attend Mass, you can also receive the body and blood, soul and divinity of the second person of the Holy Trinity, Jesus Christ. This is why I became a priest. I never wanted to be a priest, but I fell in love. At one of my seminarian assignments, I walked into the sacristy one day and I said to the priest before Mass, "Are we doing anything special?" He replied that we were going to celebrate Mass. Let us never forget the great gift we have been given in the Eucharist, and always be persistent in the prayer of supplication. Put into practice the admonition of St. Paul in today's reading. I charge you in the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who will judge the living and the dead, and by his appearing and his kingly power, proclaim the word. Be persistent, whether it is convenient or inconvenient. Convince, reprimand, encourage through all patience and teaching. Do we have that kind of faith? If it were illegal to attend Mass, how many of us would be here? When the Son of Man comes, will he find faith at St. Philip Neri Parish?